Joe Rogan, RFK Jr., Peter Hotez, and the mainstream media. Everyone wants this one. Let's get into it. Explosive intro. So, Joe Rogan had RFK Jr. on his podcast for 3 hours of truth bombs dropping everywhere. It was amazing. It was intense. And it was fact-checked by James the entire way through.
What is his name?
Jamie.
Jamie.
Young Jamie.
You can look up. You can look up this study.
They talked about censorship, the military-industrial complex, big pharma, the CIA probably killing JFK, and the fact that they are shills for the military-industrial complex, feeding endless wars and all of the money that goes along with that. Which I have another video coming about BlackRock connecting to why war is so good for business. Obviously, they went after big pharma, which has been hugely exposed during the pandemic. Oh yeah, I'm Jeff D., your garden variety, conservative-leaning, libertarian, conspiracy theorist gamer here on YouTube. I loved all of that. It was my jam. You know who didn't love it? Big pharma, the big media, and all of the science people. Most notably, a Dr. Peter Hotez, who's famous for being the fat and out-of-shape doctor to lecture Rogan about vaccines.
Do you take care of your immune system in other ways? Do you take probiotics? Are you cautious about your diet?
I'm not as cautious about my diet as I should be. I'm a junk foodaholic, actually.
Well, that seems like a terrible thing for your health.
It is a terrible thing for my health, and something my wife is working on.
But that seems ridiculous for someone who works with health.
Yeah.
What's going on with you, man?
Sometimes, man, I just don't get it right.
How often?
What?
How often?
How often do I steal a bag of chips or something like that?
How often do you eat garbage?
I don't know. No, hopefully not every day, but
Hopefully not every day.
Yeah, maybe a couple of times a week.
Oh.
He's also famous for making his rounds across mainstream media, parroting talking points and narratives that were completely wrong through the entire pandemic. I mean, he blew everything, except for at the very, very beginning when he was a little bit skeptical, and then it became obvious that his funding came with strings attached. So he stepped in line, lock and step, with the narrative of the big pharma shills, and now he's got to eat it. It's on video. We have it. And I got a big supercut of him just being wrong about everything that I'm going to throw at the end of the video. So wait for that. But this doctor, Peter Hotez, has come after Rogan and RFK Jr. for having this podcast in general. He's spewing the same tired disinformation, misinformation, dangerous conspiracy, hurting democracy. I'm waiting for him to say racist at this point. It's insane. And Rogan is being as respectful as it feels like he could be, saying, hey, I will literally have you come on my show in front of 100 million people and debate your side to discredit this loony RFK Jr., who's like an environmental lawyer. Like, sure, go ahead, come on. Come on the show. I'll give you both as much time as we need, and we could squash this beef. And it's Rogan, so he even threw money at it. Rogan will give $100,000 to any charity he wants if he just comes on the show, does the debate with RFK Jr. Just put to bed all the issues. Put it out in the open. Debate the science. You're like 40 years into an expertise in vaccines. Come on the show and debate your side. And Peter Hotez says, no. Oh no, $100,000 isn't nearly enough. You should give $50 million and an apology for being wrong about everything. No debate required. So yeah, the guy won't debate. He won't give any specific points that were wrong. As I said, James was doing fact checks all the way through, so it seemed very on point. There's a lot of big questions that were asked, a lot of information, like I said, truth bombs.
But they took atrazine and they put it in a tank with 40 frogs for 3 years. They put it below the exposure levels that EPA considers acceptable to humans. And 30 of those frogs, they were all male frogs, and they were double Z, male frogs, so they were super males. And 30 of those frogs were chemically castrated. 4 of them turned into females and produced fertile eggs. So they took male frogs, gave them atrazine, 10% of them turned into female and produced fertile eggs. And we're subjecting our children to exposure to that every day.
What is atrazine?
It's in the water. It's a pesticide.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that? Turn the friggin' frogs gay. Serious crap.
The whole situation is really just leading us to this distrust of the science, and that's what the real problem is. They want blind trust and compliance. RFK Jr. talked about how Reagan removed the liability factor for vaccine manufacturers. Too many people were getting injured, they were getting sued, and they said, hey, we can't afford to keep getting sued, so we need you to take away our liability. The Reagan administration asked, why can't you just make them safe? That would be the better solution. Their response is, it's impossible to make them safe. There's a cost-benefit analysis. They give this much benefit, there's this much risk. But we can't make them perfectly safe, just the nature of how they work. So the U.S. government, in its infinite wisdom, gave them the liability free so they could manufacture at their own will, doesn't matter how good or bad they are free. And what happened? Well, we saw an explosion in the vaccine schedule from like 3 vaccines to like 70. Insanity in a tiny period of time. And then there happened to be a whole bunch of new issues that came along the way in our health, which seemed to corroborate or at least correlate very closely to the time that the vaccine schedule expanded and the liability disappeared. Just like we're seeing now, a whole bunch of health problems happen that are correlating to the same time frame as the Rona pandemic vaccines came out. We got myocarditis, we got fertility issues, stillborns, miscarriages, palsies, deafness. You look at people like the lady from the Pussycat Dolls, you look at Jamie Foxx, you look at all of these athletes all around the world.
I mean, it's terrible. These beautiful children who were dying on the playing field, and COVID was killing people, but it was old people, yeah.
Cause unknown, the epidemic of sudden deaths in 2021 and 2022. Edward Dowd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Died after first vaccine dose, dies at hospital. Football, died on the field.
And none of this was reported, and there's thousands and thousands of those stories. I think.
Well, they were also kind of suppressed.
Yeah, one of the data points. He went in and looked globally. People do die on playing fields. It's a pretty steady average of 29 per year for 30 years, and we were getting after vaccination, I think 29 per month.
There's a lot of questions and a lot of weird things that are happening in people's health that are correlating directly with the timeline of the massive rollout of the experimental RNA vaccines. That's not to say they caused them, but there is a correlation in the timelines, and it should be looked at. And they are actively trying not to look at these things. That's what the whole podcast was about with the pharma aspect, that there are lots of correlations that should be looked at. And every time they see them actively avoiding it, it seems suspicious and hurts our trust in the institution of medicine. Now, don't get me wrong, I've had big mistrust of the institution of medicine for a very long time. But I, like many people, woke up big to this idea during the pandemic. I made horrible, really rude, and kind of hilarious remarks towards anti-vaxxers, even as recent as 2019. I made a toast at a wedding with a joke about anti-vaxxers being psychotic loons that shouldn't be trusted. Literally take every word back. I feel like a fool for having even said it. Then I saw what was going on in the pandemic. I saw what happened with Rogan taking ivermectin and then getting ridiculed for horse paste. As someone who is uneducated and of mediocre intellect, I was destroying doctors on Facebook arguments because they were parroting these narratives that were pushed from the top, and they were all wrong.
You have a much higher chance of getting this newly transmissible variant we had never seen before a couple of weeks ago. And it's the unvaccinated people who it's going to make sick. And we really just cannot afford for you to have to go to the hospital right now.
Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick, and that it's not just in the clinical trials, but it's also in real-world data.
And it scared the crap out of me. How is it that I could slam dunk on a doctor of epidemiology about ivermectin winning a Nobel Peace Prize for being used to cure an epidemic and being safely administered for like billions of doses, having one of the best safety profiles of almost any drug ever? I mean, it's super, super safe. And then to have a doctor saying, why would you even talk about horse wormer? And then the same people would be discrediting or crediting sources based on what Wikipedia told them and what CNN and MSNBC told them. It was very eye-opening to see that the people who are the science could be bought, could be corrupt, could be just stupid. But because they were in this class of experts, that they were expected to be trusted. They demanded respect and trust without ever proving that they're worth it. And that's the prime example here with this Dr. Peter Hotez. We're saying, put your cards on the table. You can't just say, you're wrong. Nah. How am I wrong? And he will not say. And everyone is just saying, dude, if you don't debate him, if you don't correct it, it just says that you're wrong. And going around these different medias and having them say, oh, sorry for all the bullying that you're getting from these horrible anti-vaxxer or whatever people. You can't talk to them. You can't even entertain their idea because it just gives more momentum to their crazy ideas.
Now, Hotez again saying he is not afraid of talking about vaccine misinformation. He's afraid of debating what he says is science. He says it is undebatable.
It's like, no, it doesn't. It just clears the air of if there's a miscommunication or if one or both of you are wrong in some way. But he refuses to even entertain the side, even when there's hard data proving there needs to be a conversation. We're entering into a very interesting era where citizen journalists, podcasters, people of that nature are getting the message out, getting the word out, and people are watching, people are tuning in, people are listening, and they don't care what the media says. They don't care what the big corporations are pushing. They don't care even what the president says.
All right. God save the Queen, man.
He's dead.
Like, we're tuning out the powers that be. We have a grassroots movement of outputting information, and it's incredible to see it disseminating from so many different sources rather than just super tiny, elite controlled sets of sources that are obviously hijacked by those at the very top. I don't know exactly what I can share. So we'll see what happens with the editing, but I am going to drop that supercut of Dr. Peter Hotez crapping all over himself and being wrong about 100 times on his media circuits. If you enjoyed the video, please like, please comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you want to see next. I'll see you on the next video.
One of the things that we're not hearing a lot about is the unique potential safety problem of coronavirus vaccines.
And then something changed.
Any vaccine released by emergency use authorization by the FDA is an outstanding vaccine.
J&J's vaccine has a risk of life-threatening blood clots.
Don't overthink it. They're both really good. They're all really good vaccines. Get vaccinated now.
You got to call now.
If you wait, it's going to be really too late to protect your child.
This was your child. What happens next could make it the worst day of your life.
So even though COVID poses zero threat to healthy children,
vaccinate your children.
Be safe and not sorry.
I'm strongly recommending for adolescents to get their 2 doses of vaccine and fully immunized after those 2 doses.
That can help save lives.
This is going to be a long-lasting vaccine.
A few moments later.
We're seeing that 2 doses is not holding up well for emergency room visits. It's not holding up well for hospitalizations.
Here we go again.
everyone's going to need a booster. You need that third immunization. Triple the amount. Get that third immunization. The 2 mRNA vaccines were always a 3-dose vaccine. The 2 mRNA vaccines were always a 3-dose vaccine. I've always said this is a 3-dose vaccine. I've always said this is a 3-dose vaccine. This is a 3-dose vaccine. That third immunization, the problem is it's not holding up. So we may have to look at sort of innovative solutions.
Oh God, not this again.
Fourth immunization, just to keep them going, keep the country going. We have to consider some out of the box things. A fourth immunization, a fourth immunization. Get that second boost, a second boost to keep the country going. I've made that recommendation. A fourth immunization,
But I'm still not done.
Un semester later.
Unfortunately, the numbers are starting to trend up again. So the hospitalizations are up. And so the most important message that I have this morning is get your new bivalent booster.
Willie and Lise were saying they got their booster, and I was like, oh, I need to get mine. And then I found out they're talking about the third shot. And is that the bivalent, or is it the fourth booster, or does it matter? Like,
don't worry so much about the number of.
There's no wrong way to use it.
You have to get it. This new bivalent booster.
Double or triple stack up.
The new bivalent one is doing a much better job. You have to get a booster.
Yeah.
You need to get this new bivalent booster, that bivalent booster for COVID.
Does everyone ages 12 and older need a booster?
The answer is yes. And by the way, if you're over 50 and have gotten 2 boosters and more than 2 to 4 months out, you're going to need a third booster as well, a 5th immunization.
5!
I don't think we're going to need an annual booster like flu.
Eventually.
Dr. Hotez supports yearly boosters, just like flu.
But I'm still not done.
It looks as though the boosters are not holding up quite as well as we'd like. And I think our thinking is going to change, and that what's going to happen is every few months, we may need another booster.
Perfect results each and every time.
We just could not overcome that massive disinformation campaign. These fake concepts of herd immunity and discrediting masks.
Well, Dr. Hotez, you are a national treasure.
It is picking off young people like we've never seen.
Dr. Peter Hotez, that was extremely informative.
Disinformation that you're hearing, that kids are fine, it's nonsense. Kids need to get that vaccination. Watch out for that misinformation. If you haven't gotten your 5 and up vaccinated yet, now's the time to do that.
Dr. Peter Hotez, thank you for saving the world.
They also support giving that third immunization for the 12 to 17-year-olds. People have to feel safe.
Take down the fake information.
These fake concepts of herd immunity. The last hope is to vaccinate our way through this. Make certain that everybody's vaccinated, including their kids. That's the single most important thing right now the American people have to do.
Dr. Peter Hotez was the person that we like to go to for the sort of expertise.
The single most impactful thing you can do is make certain that you're fully boosted and preferably 2 boosted.
Later.
Monkeypox is a global emergency.
And it's accelerating among a specific social network of men who have sex with men, not because it's sexually transmitted.
Monkeypox is sexually transmitted, almost exclusively.
And with finger guns. Check. That's a video. Yeah, go on about the Rogan podcast.
Like how the guy was talking about mercury, like he was talking about, you had to call around. He's like, since when do you have to call away from the CDC or anyone or the NIH to talk to the leader of a pharmaceutical giant when it comes to vaccines? It's just like...
He's saying that you shouldn't switch from the people who are in charge of, safety to the industry that's supposed to be monitored for the answers to, any question. And that just shouldn't be a thing at all.
Yeah, and the way he explained mercury and how the guy was like, well, Bobby, there's one, there's a good kind of mercury and a bad kind of mercury, etc. And he was like, no.
Except there isn't. What are you talking about?